I am ecstatic. I have received approval to go see the world's most powerful computer in person. I'm going with Jessica, a freelance videographer and filmmaker from the neighboring state of Kentucky. Jessica and I are now going to see the world's most powerful computer called Frontier. It's also considered the world's fastest computer. Jessica, how excited are you?
I think that's pretty cool.
You've never seen it, right?
I have not, and
Yeah,
I was
I'm not
surprised
either.
to find it in the middle of Tennessee.
This video will explain why Frontier is such a big deal and how its mind-boggling computational power can help us address major challenges like climate change and finding a cure for cancer. Frontier is funded by the US government and has some security measures in place for visitors, including the media. Before they approved our visit, they asked if we were US citizens and had us fill out a government clearance form. I'm finally here at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, where the world's fastest and most powerful computer is located. Let's go.
Welcome to
Thank you,
Oak Ridge
Sarah.
National Laboratory.
This is Sarah, the lab's media relations manager. She reminded us just how much humanity's technological prowess has advanced over the past few decades.
This was the first supercomputer.
1947.
This was an Oracle computer,
Okay.
and it's extremely archaic. Your phone
Wow.
is a million times faster.
Oh, wow.
than what this was. But this was, I mean, computers used to be people who were computing.
Right.
Then it became automated.
Should we go? So we're now going to see the world's fastest computer. It's right behind this wall. This is Brunson, the lab's director of science. He's also a joint faculty professor in the Department of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Tennessee. There's no one better to explain why Frontier is so extraordinary. Behind this door, and here it is. Oh my God. Just look at it. Man, I was so excited to see this computer. Maybe touch it again, just. So tell us about this marvel.
This is the world's fastest supercomputer, the fastest machine ever built by human beings. It's a remarkable scientific invention.
And just so that our viewers have an idea, tell us how Frontier's computational ability compares to that of the fastest personal computer or laptop.
It's 2 quintillion operations per second. And basically you get 1 billion times the power of a laptop.
Can you say that again? It's as powerful as 1 billion personal computers.
The laptop you're going to go buy at Best Buy.
Wow. To visualize that, imagine every person on Earth doing a calculation every second non-stop for more than 30,000 years. That's the kind of power we are talking about. This enormous computational power is made possible by more than 37,000 GPUs. GPUs, or graphic processing units, are the devices that handle complex mathematical computations with lightning speed, making Frontier capable of processing mind-boggling amounts of data in record time. The Frontier is also a massive machine. Each of its 74 cabinets weighs more than 8,000 pounds, nearly 4 tons. That's roughly the same as a large pickup truck. So if you imagine 74 pickup trucks lined up, that's how much the whole system weighs. So we're gonna open one of the cabinets.
So yeah, I can just
Okay, like you're ready.
Yeah, perfect. Let's open one. Let's just see what is inside. Oh my God.
So, as promised,
Uh-huh.
cooling system that's necessary to get the heat out
Mhm.
as we compute is sort of most prominent. These red hoses bring away the hot water.
There's water in those hoses.
There's water in these hoses, and they're washing over all of these individual mode boards, each of
Wow.
which is a very powerful computer in and of itself. They're all slotted in, and they're all connected to one another, sort of in the back.
So each one of these like little boxes is a
Everything with a
computer.
handle. Everything with a handle.
Each one of them is a computer,
A
basically.
very, very powerful computer.
And how many of those are here in the whole?
9,408.
9,408 powerful computers comprise this supercomputer. Wow.
Yeah. And so cool water comes in on the blue hoses, as you might expect. Hot water goes away. It's interesting, though. Even the cold water is not that cold. It's like 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
And we do that so we don't have to chill it. We save power by using hottish water and then using that to sweep over the components on the board. And then when the water comes out, it's like 140 degrees.
So when did we discover that we could actually use water to cool computers?
Yeah, we've been doing that for a long, long time.
Okay.
Older Cray vector supercomputers, if you've ever seen a movie where somebody refers to a Cray supercomputer, it usually is this sort of semicircular thing that has a couch on it. They actually used Freon, pure Freon like you have in your car to keep your thing to it. They quickly learned that was pretty expensive. It's sort of hard to keep up. It's much easier to use water. And water is actually a very good thermal conductor. It takes heat away really effectively if you can get it out of where the warm is. And so it's efficient. Water's abundant here in East Tennessee. And as long as we don't do too much damage to it, it's easy to use.
So when we say this is the world's fastest computer that we know of, right? Governments might have faster computers that we don't know, right?
Yeah.
but
everybody always asks that. And but frankly, it's kind of not worth it. Whether or not you need a more powerful computer to do things that are related to national security or even breaking codes, that's not so clear. It's possible that somebody has a faster computer and we just don't know about it. It's also possible they don't.
So how much does this computer cost? Do we know?
Oh, that's a really good question. And it's a hard question for me to answer.
Okay.
And that's because we constantly have operations of the machine going on. At the same time, we're sort of building the next computer.
It's in the millions or?
It's in the millions. It's in the hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions,
yeah.
Okay.
And so total, but we have to integrate it over time. And everybody who works here at the center works on both building the next new computer and running the current one we have. And so it's hard to separate the total cost. But yeah, our budget is of order $200 million a year.
I'm going to ask you a question that I think is on everyone's mind. If you were to use this supercomputer to mine Bitcoin, how many Bitcoins can you mine every day?
People ask me that all the time. They ask me, are people mining cryptocurrency? They are not, and we check. We check constantly to make sure. And to be honest, at this point, I don't know how many Bitcoins you could actually mine with this. It was the case, say, 4 years ago that fast GPUs like this were exactly the thing to have to mine cryptocurrency. They've moved beyond that. They actually have these special processors called FPGAs. They're especially suited to that job. So actually for that task, this may not be the ideal platform. But it just goes to show you that GPUs are good for some things, but when you sort of put yourself in a corner, maybe it's hard.
How many people work at the laboratory, and how many people work specifically on Frontier?
Total at the laboratory, we have almost 7,000 people.
7,000 people.
And in our division that runs the supercomputer, we have around 200 people.
Okay.
And that includes everybody from the technicians who keep this running all the time to the people who handle administrivia for people to get accounts and projects on the machine, to scientists, computational scientists that help people use it.
Because I assume this computer needs constant maintenance, right?
It does. It does need constant maintenance. The frequency's not so great. And if we lose one of these individual computers, that doesn't mean everything has to come to a screeching halt. Now, the particular program that's running on that particular computer, it fails. Okay, so you have to redo what you've done. But everybody else who's running at the same time, they don't even feel it. These guys can come in, disconnect everything, pull this out, and the rest of the machine goes on unturned.
So, just one last question. Is this computer available for the research centers, for the universities in America to use?
Absolutely. So our major allocation program is this allocation program called Insight. Insight's almost unique when it comes to supercomputer allocation programs. It's open to anyone on the planet. But there is a you must meet this Paul the ride sort of requirement. And in addition to having a compelling science problem, like any proposal you would write to get access to resources, you also have to prove that you both can use the computer and that you really need to use the computer to attack the problem that you're looking at. If you can meet those sort of twin requirements of having an interesting problem and you can only do the problem on this machine, that allocation program is available, including university researchers here in the U.S., lab researchers, private industry here in the U.S. and abroad, universities abroad as well. Anyone on the planet can apply for time.
I think the only thing like normal about this supercomputer is the monitor. It just looks like a regular monitor, but a little bigger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the bigger actually is not just for effect. It actually gives you the opportunity, because you've done a simulation, for example, on Frontier, where you've done, for example, the entire planet. But what matters is the detail at scales that you wouldn't be able to see on an ordinary map.
Dr. Anuj Kapadia is a medical science researcher using Frontier to find a cure for cancer. He says the power this computer provides for drug discovery is unprecedented. What kind of impact has Frontier, this supercomputer, had on cancer research?
We live in a day and age of big data. There is so much information being gathered about human health and human habits. When you go to a hospital, a clinic, you get a CT scan, an MRI scan. All this information is available for analysis. We have information being collected about human habits. Who lives where? How often are they exercising? Do they live close to a groundwater contamination source? They live close to a polluted area? What kind of air are they breathing? What kind of food are they eating? Previously, when you had so much data, we really didn't know what to do with it. It takes a certain level of computing. It takes a certain amount of power in your computational capabilities to be able to analyze that. Frontier has made that possible. We are now able to take these vast data streams and be able to analyze all of these data at the same time. Let's look at information about your medical record. Let's look at your health habits. Let's look at your medication and compare that to millions and millions of others like you who are being treated for a similar disease. And then a computational model will tell you whether this is going to be effective for you, and if not, what is the best way to treat this particular patient.
So when we say we live in the era of big data, that means we have so much data that we don't really know what to do with, unless we have a supercomputer like Frontier to help us understand, make sense of that data.
That is correct. We have so much data coming in, and often we don't know what to do with that. It takes a machine like Frontier to make sense of these data sets and identify relationships between different parts of that data that can then help guide human health better.
So have we had any promising breakthroughs in cancer research because we have Frontier?
Previously, when these data were being collected, a human would have to manually enter those data into a centralized database.
Right.
One of the things we have done, my team has worked on creating software that automatically analyzes all the data coming in. It harmonizes it, which means it makes it uniform so that it can be worked on by any downstream analysis system. Doing that has saved close to 40,000 man hours.
Wow.
And it now enables being able to surveil cancer at a large nationwide scale.
And so one of the things that the public usually asks is when will we find a cure for cancer? And when will we have drugs that will at least help patients manage cancer and prevent it from being a fatal disease? Are you hopeful that this supercomputer Frontier will help us get
there or achieve that?
Some of the things that we are currently working on using Frontier, one of the projects is drug discovery. You have so many different drugs that could be used to treat one particular type of cancer. How do you identify which drug is the most optimal? In some cases, if you're a pharma company, you might have 10,000, 15,000 potential drug molecules that could be used to treat that cancer. A system like Frontier helps you narrow down that list to the top 5 candidates. You might be able to look at properties like how effective is that drug, how stable is that drug, what would it take to manufacture that drug. You can do all of this computationally so that the pharma company is now looking at only 5 viable candidates rather than 10,000.
Wow.
Another aspect is...
So can you say that again? Because that's actually quite impressive. You said instead of looking thousands or 10,000 drug candidates, now because of Frontier, that will be narrowed down to only 5?
That's right.
Can you please say that again? Elaborate, because this is really incredible.
When you have these different drug candidates, they have many, many different properties associated with them. How effective is that drug? How stable is that drug? What will it take to manufacture that drug? Is it even possible? We can have a drug formula that may hypothetically work for that cancer. Is it possible to actually manufacture it? So you can define, Frontier allows you to define these properties, and then it will perform an exhaustive search across all of these 10,000 candidates and tell you which 5 or 4 or maybe even 1 is at the top in terms of your defined characteristics.
Here is the ISO surface.
Drug discovery is not the only thing Frontier can help with. Climate scientists are using it to understand complex atmospheric events like cloud behavior that have so far escaped their grasp.
Can we model and predict climate change better because of Frontier?
Yes, we can. Forming thoughts.
Elaborate, please.
One of the hardest things about climate prediction is what goes on with clouds, moist convection. They happen at such a small scale that it's really hard to model in a simulation that has a grid spacing of 100 kilometers where clouds are actually having physics that happen on the scale of microns to meters. So one of the things that is really interesting about the simulations on Frontier, we have a project called SCREAM, which is the Simplified Cloud Resolving E3SM Atmospheric Model. It's a mouthful. But it is actually resolving storm scales. It has a grid spacing around 3 kilometers, which allows us to explicitly resolve deep convection, which is responsible for a large percentage of the precipitation on Earth.
Let's unpack that. As you probably know, clouds are made up of tiny water droplets or ice crystals, and they form when warm air rises and cools down. This process is called convection. Now here's the tricky part. This convection process happens on a really small scale, like from tiny droplets to a few meters. But when we try to simulate or model the climate, we use grids that are much larger, like 100 kilometers across. So it's like trying to fit something really small into a much bigger box. To make things more accurate, scientists have developed a special simulation called SCREAM. What's cool about SCREAM is that it uses a grid spacing of about 3 kilometers, which is much smaller than usual. This means it can actually see and simulate those tiny cloud details and the big storms they create. By using SCREAM, scientists can better understand how these big storm systems work and how they affect things like rainfall all over the Earth. So in simpler terms, SCREAM helps us get a clearer picture of how water moves around in the atmosphere, which is incredibly important for understanding the climate.
Like in simpler terms, can this supercomputer help us come up with specific solutions for specific regions on how to deal with their climate situation, with their crises?
I think that's the best way to view it. With these simulations, we can better constrain uncertainty for how climate is going to change on regional scales that matter the most. If we're going to build a power plant, where should we build it? Will that river begin to dry up? Will it increase? Of course, things like this depend highly upon human infrastructure like dams and things like that. But understanding what's going to change, both in the mean and in the extremes, for river catchments that feed into our water systems, is extremely important. And yes, this model will help us constrain that uncertainty so we can better make these decisions that matter most to the American public and to stakeholders.
What an experience to see the world's most powerful computer in person. I will never forget it. What did you guys think? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And also please don't forget to subscribe and like if you want to see more videos on the latest groundbreaking innovations that will shape our future. Thank you for watching.